Hello, everyone. Seeing that we're here in the month of Teves, I thought I would take a few minutes to talk about Asara B'Teves. I think that Asara B'Teves is a tinus that's given a little bit short shrift. People don't really treat Asara B'Teves with the seriousness that it deserves. At least that's the feeling that I get sometimes. And why is that? So Asara B'Teves is a fast day which, when people think about it, it's the most closely connected with the fact that Nebuchadnezzar laid siege to Yerushalayim, which of course was one of the main events that led up to the Churban. And that happened on the 10th of Teves, and that's one of the things that we commemorate on Asar B'Teves. But when it comes to fast days for the Churban, it seems a little bit out of place on the calendar. You know, in the cycle of the Yiddish calendar, we have different seasons. We know that when we come to Nisan, we're all thinking about Yetzias Mitzrayim, and we're thinking about the Geula. After Pesach, we're thinking about Tzviras HaOmer and the run-up to Kabbalas Torah on Shavuos. When we come to the summer, we know that the 3 weeks are coming. When we come to Asara B'Teves, we start thinking about the Churban. And ultimately, we come to Rosh Chodesh Av first, and we know and then ultimately we come to Tisha B'Av, which is the great day of mourning on the Churban Bayis. So that's really the season of mourning over the Beis HaMikdash. At the end of the summer, we come to Elul, and we have the Yomim Noraim, and we're busy thinking about Tshuva. Then we come to Sukkot, and we're being Misameach with the Chag of Sukkot. Then, eventually, we come to Chanukah. What a joyous time of year it is when we celebrate Chanukah. And then, somewhere in between Chanukah and Purim, we have this day of Asara B'Teves, when we fast and we commemorate the fact that Nebuchadnezzar laid siege to Yerushalayim. But it's not during that season of mourning on the Beis HaMikdash. And I think for that reason, it kind of gets overlooked. So I want to take a couple of minutes to speak about something else that we also commemorate and fast over on Asara B'Teves. The Chazal tell us there are really three things that occurred in the month of Teves, and the Chazal wrapped them all together and made one fast day of Asara B'Teves to commemorate all three. On the 8th of Teves, that's when the Targum Shivim was written. What was the Targum Shivim? Talmai HaMelech, which probably was a Greek king, he took 72 Zikanim, 72 Talmidei Chachamim, and he instructed them to take the Torah HaKadoshah and write it over in Greek. That occurred on the 8th day of Teves. The 9th day of Teves is the yahrzeit of Ezra HaSofer, another calamity, and of course the 10th day of Teves is when Nebuchadnezzar laid siege to Yerushalayim. The Chazal tell us that the 8th day of Teves, the day that Talmai HaMelech instructed the Shivim Zikanim, 72 Zikanim really, to write over the Sefer Torah in Greek, the Lashon of Chazal is, Oisei Hayom Kasha LiYisrael, that day was as difficult and as terrible for Klal Yisrael, Ki Yom Shenasa Bo HaEgel. It was akin to the day that Klal Yisrael made the Egel Hazav. Now at face value, we look at this and we have to ask ourselves, all right, so they took the Torah HaKadoshah and they wrote it over in Greek. Is that such a calamity equal to the construction of the Egel, to the worshiping of the Egel? And yet, that's what Chazal say it is. So certainly this is something that we have to try to understand. And I think the way I would understand it is, you have to realize what it means to take the Torah HaKadoshah that's written in Lashon HaKodesh and take it and write it over in Greek, translate it into Greek. Why did Talmai want this done? One of the things historically that is said over is that in Alexandria, they had a tremendous library, kind of like the Library of Congress that we have nowadays. And they looked at the Torah HaKadoshah and they said that the Torah HaKadoshah has to be included in this vast storehouse of human knowledge. But in Lashon HaKodesh, nobody would understand it. So they wanted it written over in Greek. To take the Torah HaKadoshah and to distill it down into Greek, that's something that can't be done. Let's remember that when Moshe Rabbeinu was up in Shamayim, the Rebbeinu Shalom showed him that at one point in our history, there would be a great Talmid Chacham by the name of Rabbi Akiva, who would be Dorish Tilin Shal Halachas. He would learn out heaps and heaps and heaps of halachas from the tagin, from the crowns that are written on top of letters in the Sefer Torah. The Torah Kedosha, written in Lashon HaKodesh, is something that is so deep and so profound and so complex. And you look at all of the drushes that we make from the psukim, take out a Gemara, learn Daf Yomi, and see what we derive from every letter and every word and every pasuk in the Torah Kedosha. That's the Torah Kedosha as written in Lashon HaKodesh. Take it and translate it into Greek. What you're doing it is you're reducing it to a book. You're reducing it to something that's on a human level. You're taking out the divinity of it and you're trying to distill it down to something man-made. And one of the great dangers of that is that we have to realize that the Torah HaKedosha is something that governs every facet of our life. There's no part of our life that is not governed by the hashkafas and the halachas of the Torah HaKedosha. The way we wake up in the morning is governed by the Torah HaKedosha. The way we go to sleep at night is governed by the Torah HaKedosha. The way we eat is governed by the Torah HaKedosha. Dare I say, the way we're supposed to respond to a crisis like COVID-19 is dictated to us by the Torah HaKedosha. Rabbi Say, whether you should or should not wear a mask is not something which is up to individual interpretation. It's a shaila lahalacha. If there are doctors that say that you're putting people at risk by not wearing a mask, so you need to go to a Rav and you have to ask a Rav a shaila, what should I do? Should I wear one or should I not wear one? I never understood where the room is for all of these machlokes. You go to a Rav and you ask a Rav. If you wear a mask and somebody says, why are you wearing a mask? I asked my Rav. My Rav paskin they should wear a mask. Somebody else will come along and say, listen, I asked the Rav. My Rav says that in this situation I don't have to wear a mask. If it's true and he got such a psak from a reliable Rav, so he's following a psak. But there's nothing in our lives that the Torah HaKedosha does not govern. It governs the way we raise our children. It governs our marriages. It governs everything. But that's only a Torah HaKedosha that's divine, that's written in Torah HaKedosha, that's written in Lashon HaKodesh, that's presented to us the way it was handed down from Har Sinai. You want to take it and you want to reduce it to the Greek? You want to translate it now into Greek. So now what is it? Where are the crowns on the letters that Rabbi Akiva is going to darshan? Where are the words, the extra letters, an extra vav, an extra yud, an extra hey, that the Chazal are going to darshan to tell us all of these halachas? Suddenly you've taken all of the depth and all of the complexity out of the Torah chas v'chalilah. And it could be that's one of the things that Talmai wanted to do. Talmai Taka wanted to just reduce it to some kind of book of human wisdom. But that's not what the Torah Kedosha is. And that's why Oisa Hayoim Kashal Yisrael, like the day that they made the Egel. Because when they made an Egel, they did the same thing. When they made an Egel, they denied the divinity of a Torah HaKedosha. They suddenly reduced the religion to an Egel Azov, also something that you can't follow, also something that's not going to govern your life. We have to remember what the Torah HaKedosha is. And that's one of the reasons why we fast on Asara B'Teves. That calamity of the Targum Shivim, as it's known, is one of the things that we commemorate on Asara B'Teves, one of the reasons why we fast. And I think it's a very important lesson that we have to take with us, to remember that the Torah HaKedosha governs every single aspect of our lives. It's not just something for the Beis Medrash. It's not just something for the Daf Yomi shir or for the Beis HaKnesses. It governs every single facet and aspect of our lives. Thank you so much for joining me for these few minutes of Limud HaTorah. The schus of Limud HaTorah should be Megan against Klal Yisrael. The Rebbeinu Shalom should send Yeshuas and Refuas and Parnasa to all those in need. We should be zeichet to see the Bias Gal Tzedek B'Meher V'Yameinu. Amen. Be well.